What's up, geeks and gamers? It's Odin coming back with a box office breakdown for this past weekend, which saw Barbie finally pass the $1 billion mark after only 17 days of release, making this one of the fastest to reach $1 billion, not only this year, but also in the past few years. And so very, very impressive numbers here for Barbie, and this film destroying the competition from new films and newcomers, The Meg, and also the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem film. We're going to talk about all of these movies today, but of course, we're going to have to start out with this big news from Variety, as Deadline's articles, at the very least, their international news, has not updated as of the recording of this video. So over at Variety, Barbie surpasses $1 billion globally after 17 days. The Greta Gerwig film is the first billion-dollar release solely helmed by a female director. Of course, you all know, when it comes to the mainstream media, that is the narrative that they're always going to try to run with. Barbie is saying hiya to the billion-dollar club. I kind of now miss the cringe of Nance over here, the cringe given to us by Becca. Greta Gerwig's pink-coated fantasy comedy has surpassed $1 billion at the global box office, including $459 million in North America and $572 million internationally. Now, this is very impressive because a movie like this, the way it was initially released, the way in which the initial numbers were coming in, it made it seem almost as if there was going to be possibly a much larger domestic turn for the movie versus international, but now it's running away with the international market. Now it's getting to the point where we're going to see strong numbers by the end of their run, right, by the end of the run in both of those markets for this movie, but we're probably going to end up still seeing the international number being a lot higher. Now, many people are asking the question is, do I think that Barbie's domestic could end up beating the $700 million plus domestically that was made by Top Gun Maverick? And at this point in time, I would say I don't see that happening. This film is clearly still making a lot of money and it still has a lot of room to go, but it's just looking like, to me at the very least, that this film is going to probably end up getting maybe close to the $600 million mark domestically, but also that means close to $700 plus million internationally. I do think that this film will be the highest grossing film of the year. Not only has it made $1 billion, but right now, after only 17 days of release, this is the reason why I've been very clear the last couple weeks especially, why I think that this movie will probably end up beating the Super Mario Brothers movie as being the highest grossing film of the year, getting upwards of possibly 1.4 to 1.5 billion, could end up beating out the entire worldwide gross for Top Gun Maverick from last year. But I think most of that's going to come from the international markets versus the domestic, whereas we saw with Top Gun Maverick, the domestic really showed up in quite large droves for that movie. And again, people are clearly showing up to this movie too, but there is those differences there. Having a stronger international versus domestic does make a little bit of a difference in the bottom line, but it doesn't really matter because this film only cost $100 million to make, meaning they're making nonstop, it seems, overall returns on their investment. 3 other billion-dollar blockbusters were co-directed by women, including Frozen, which was 1.3, Frozen 2 at 1.4, both directed by Jennifer Lee and Chris Buck, as well as Captain Marvel, co-directed by Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck. Can't say that that's in the best company of movies, but hey, they brought it up, not me. Barbie is hitting the coveted milestone after just 17 days of release, becoming the fastest Warner Brothers released and 8th in the studio's 100-year history to join the billion-dollar club. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2 previously held the record at 19 days. So that is also very, very impressive. The fact that this movie has been able to beat by 2 days its approach to $1 billion versus Harry Potter is impressive. What it does still need to be said, though, is that even though it is very impressive, and even though it is clearly, again, according to their record books, going to be the faster of the two movies, we also have to remember that when you adjust for inflation, things get a little bit different, and also the number of ticket sales do become different as well. Doesn't that change the fact that this movie is doing really well, that the film is performing to a very, very strong degree and is going to continue to do so, but it is always important, I think, to provide things within full context. It goes on to say, it's already the second highest grossing movie of 2023 behind only Universal Illumination's Super Mario Brothers movie, which earned $574 million domestically. So I think that the Barbie film is definitely going to pass that mark, and $1.35 million worldwide. I do think right now the Barbie film has the pace to be able to even come up and to even beat a film like that over the course of its release. We do still have some word coming out from Tony over at Deadline. So Deadline, has not completely gone away from this and these updated news items here. But as you can see, the 2023 box office has surged past $6 billion. And a big part of that, of course, is because of Barbie. The Barbenheimer effect has had a major part of it as well. But this weekend itself was also very, very strong. You had a lot of films competing for that second place spot. Let me see if Nancy has updated her article. She has not at this point in time, but as she was reporting recording just the other day, it was on the cusp of $1 billion. It has now officially done that with the numbers that have come in thus far. Looking at the numbers.com, as you can see, when it comes to this movie, it is clearly the first place winner, dropping only another 43%. So the film that is dropping right now in the 40s range almost every single day, let alone weekends, means that this film is legging out to be going towards the higher end of the projections that we had talked about last week for this movie. This is very, very good. This is a very strong hold. This is a very strong box office performance, and we are going to ultimately end up seeing the movie continue to be at that top. There really is no major competition that this film is going to have to worry about for quite some time. And so really the only thing I think that could have any impact would actually be Warner Brothers, and would be Warner Brothers' own doing, because we know Warner Brothers is not used to having hits on their hands. They're not used to having films that are actually making money. So they've been used to pushing things onto HBO Max, now just Max, a lot earlier, pushing things onto PVOD a lot earlier. And so now that they have a hit on their hands, I don't know what contracts they actually ended up making before the film's release. Did they only plan on having a short theatrical window for this movie? Are they going to put this onto Max earlier? Are they going to be able to, if they had any contracts, specifically with PVOD, when it comes to Max, that is their own company, and so they don't have to worry necessarily about that. But it will be interesting to see if they have to, if they're almost contractually obligated to put this onto PVOD earlier than what they would have liked to with how well it's doing, or whether or not those contracts are not set in stone. That will be an interesting thing. That's the only thing, honestly, I can think of where Warner Brothers could potentially not make as much money as they possibly could, and it would be their own fault versus any real actual competition. Warner Brothers also right now at this point in time has the number 2 movie in the world right now, or the number 2 film, at least domestically here, we can say for sure, and that is The Meg 2, The Trench. I still can't believe they actually made a sequel to this movie. I thought the first one was fun. I thought it was that stupid kind of fun movie. I did not want a sequel to it, though. As soon as they announced it, I said, look, the first one was fun. I saw it once, and that's all I ever really need to see it. But hey, the film is definitely doing better than what the projections had said going into the weekend. So coming in at $30 million put this film at the number 2 spot. And it is interesting to see these two movies in these top 2 spots for Warner Brothers. The number 3 spot goes to Oppenheimer. So the Barbenheimer effect has officially been ended as far as the 1-2 punch. However, it is still doing well, and I would not be surprised to see Oppenheimer continue to have another chance, actually, of being in that 1-2 punch again. The Meg 2 just barely beating it out by a couple $1 million. We know that Oppenheimer and we know that Barbie have both had very strong holds. They've been within a few percentage points of themselves when it comes to the percentage holds. And so we're seeing both of them be in the 40s, as you see with Oppenheimer, only a 39% drop. So do not be surprised to see Oppenheimer once again have a strong hold next weekend, and Barbie as well have a strong hold, while the Meg 2 most likely going to have a 50-60% drop, and that I think will bring it back down below the number 2 spot, and Oppenheimer can once again take place. But it is still impressive that this is the first time in the weeks that they have been released that Barbie and Oppenheimer have been separated on a weekend box office. TMNT Mutant Mayhem, the Seth Rogen made Ninja Turtles movie, which I've heard not very good things about. $27.9 million coming at the number 4 spot. Haunted Mansion from Disney, officially now a flop, and we'll talk about that in a second. This film dropping 63%. Can't say I'm that surprised by it. Disney is the only company, it seems, that's not able to get a grasp on the box office. Almost every studio has had at least one film. Warner Brothers now, especially with a movie like Barbie and even the Meg 2 to a certain extent, is performing so much better than what their previous movies had done. Disney so far is the only studio this year that really hasn't had a big winner as far as the summer box office especially is concerned. And when you look forward to what they have yet on their release schedule, there isn't a whole lot that they have to really look forward to. And I will talk a little bit about The Sound of Freedom. 45% hold there, still doing very well. $163.4 million, still holding at a lot of screens. This still, I think, has a chance of being able to get upwards of 180, potentially even getting close to $200 million domestic. It is still going to get international release at some point in time. And again, those dates have already put out there. Over the next few weeks is when it's going to start to release in those other countries. But it is interesting nonetheless to see this film continue to be in the top 10 of the box office after all of the crap that has been done about it. And the newest thing is they're trying to now connect the studio with one of the people that bought and paid it forward on their website, because the person who paid it forward had been arrested for a crime, and there's just a lot of really confusing things about the story, because the most confusing thing, I think, is why in the heck are they even bringing that up in the first place? It's almost as if they don't want people to go see that movie. Kind of makes you ask the question of why don't they want you to see the movie? As you can see, the numbers, though, has not yet updated. I'll go ahead and refresh it right now just to see if they have updated the numbers as of the recording of this video. It indeed has. So the film's made just about $1 billion, so definitely not a crazy amount above $1 billion. This is actually a lot less than I thought it would have been. I thought this would have been comfortably in the billion-dollar range. So that doesn't mean I don't think it's going to do well down the road, because right now the holds are showing that it's doing well. But it is still interesting nonetheless that it's not as strong of a hold as I thought it was going to be as far as getting to the billion-dollar mark. It still got there, and it's still going to continue to add to it. And as I said, I would not be surprised to see the film add up to 1.4, 1.5 billion by the end of its run. The Meg 2 is at $142 million worldwide as of the recording of this video. Let me see if I can refresh that. Most of that money, though, is coming from China. So that's why it is a bit of a mixed bag for the Meg film, though it is doing better than expected domestically, and it is making some money internationally. The fact is, it's a China co-produced movie. And so half of these profits are going to end up going to China if they actually even make profits. And with that vast majority of its money so far having been made, roughly $70 million or so, having been made in China specifically, the Meg 2 actually is not in the best position, as they only get 25%. As far as the studio is concerned, they only get 25% return on that investment, and that's only after they make their money back. So it still has a long ways to go to finally get to that point. But again, definitely a better position for them currently compared to what it could have been. Oppenheimer, a 3-hour drama making over $500 million. Very, very impressive. This film also continuing to add to it. We could see this film end close to $750 million worldwide by everything when everything is said and done, based on the numbers that we're getting right now. TMNT Mutant Mayhem at $51 million. Not a great start, but costing only $70 million means the film doesn't need to make too much money to break even. So the chances of this film being able to do so is actually still pretty strong, but it is not a guarantee by any means. What we can say, though, is a guarantee is that Haunted Mansion will indeed be another box office flop for Disney. We're looking at north of $100 million, probably closer to 150, maybe even 200 million. Disney has a spending problem. They spend way too much on their movies. This film costs a good $150 million. And if you look at the posters and you look at the trailers for this film, you think, wait, there's no way this film could cost that much money. But somehow it did. And this is again showing us why Disney is in such financial straits at this point. Looking at the box office charting, because we love doing charting here over at Geeks and Gamers, with that $59 million made so far, that means I'm projecting the film will make somewhere in total by the end of its run, somewhere between $85 and $119 million if it follows a typical fall pattern. And that would mean, based on that $150 million budget, remember, I use a 2.5 times multiplier for breaking even. Some people use a 3 times multiplier. That means in a best case, most conservative scenario, this movie is looking at $150 million plus in financial losses for Disney. Currently, it is not sitting at a very strong position. And again, couldn't happen to a nicer company in that way. Talk to Me is a new film from A24, an indie horror film, and this film has already made its money back and will continue to add to its profits. It won't be a massive moneymaker, but hey, that'll be a huge return on investment, seeing they only spent $4.5 million on the film itself. $6.75 billion when you add in typical marketing costs, which is not even a guarantee that it even spent that much on marketing, and it's already made $7.4 million in actual net profit. So very, very impressive. The Meg 2, as I mentioned, it does have a decent-sized budget, not nearly as big as the first from what I hear, but $129 million is the estimated budget, so it still needs to do quite a bit of money to break even. And because it's going to be a very China-heavy international release, that does mean that even if it does hit a break-even point, there are still going to be question marks over how much money has actually been made. Not only because they get so much less return on their investment from China, but also because of them having to split those resources. One important thing is that the current top 2 movies right now in the world, the Meg 2 and Barbie, are both co-financed movies. In the case of Meg 2, it's co-financed with a Chinese company. In the case of Barbie, we have Mattel and Universal, who are both in that Warner Brothers and Mattel in that partnership. And so even though it is going to be a good return as far as how much profit will be made from the film, it's already made quite a bit of profit. Right now, looking at around $311 million. And again, now that it's at $1 billion, I can update my charting here in real time just to show y'all what that would look like. But remember that they're probably looking at, what, a 50-50 split? I don't have the contract in front of me to know what their agreement was, but you're looking at probably a roughly 50-50 split between Mattel and Warner Brothers. And that's, again, when you have the actual end profits in mind. So even though that still means that both will be coming away with hundreds of millions of dollars by the end of its run, that's not going to be able to make up for the massive losses that have been made so far by Warner Brothers this year. So it's a big win for them, but only to a certain point. They still have Blue Beetle set to come out, which likely will be a box office flop. They still have Aquaman, and even though the first film made $1 billion, I don't know if they're going to be able to have the same kind of success with this movie, especially with the current state of the DCEU as it currently stands. But these are the numbers. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you want to see a fuller box office breakdown going into even more movies, check out me over at OMB Reviews, and I have a fuller box office breakdown already out on the channel, probably by the time this goes live on Geeks and Gamers. So make sure you smash that like button, wherever it is that you're watching. Make sure you smash it. Have a wonderful and amazing rest of your day. And as always, God bless.